To today's AE webinar on applying M&V in an ever-changing world, presented by Steve Kromer, Energy Engineer at SKEE. And today we also have a wonderful panel of speakers here to answer your questions that you may have submitted during your registration regarding measurement and verification protocols and many other hot topics. Before we begin the session, please note that this webinar may serve as one contact hour towards your certification renewal. After the conclusion of today's webinar, you will receive an email and that will serve as your record of attendance. We encourage you to engage with our presenter and panelists on the Q&A tab throughout the presentation, and we will answer your questions at the end. Steve, thanks for hosting today's session. I'll pass it along to you.
Well, thank you, Mel. And thanks to our panelists for being here. And thank you. Welcome to all the participants. I'm looking at about 300 online. We had nearly 1,000 registered. So for those of you that can't be here live, welcome to you as well. You know, we are well aware that you have many choices for content in the world today. You all know there's many things you could be watching. So we are honored that you've chosen this webinar to spend your time now or as a recording. Yeah. Again, to repeat, Mel, if you have questions, please use the Q&A box for those. If you want to chat, feel free with our panelists or myself while we're not talking, but the questions please go in the box. So again, welcome. And today we're going to hear from 3 global M&V experts. They're all experienced CMVP instructors. They'll tell us about how they've applied general M&V concepts in their specific region and context. You know, concepts and contexts, that's kind of the byword of how concepts of M&V are actually applied in various contracts and programs around the world. That's actually the major new focus of our new CMVP materials. We're generating new materials and we're trying to identify exactly how the fundamental concepts of M&V are applied in various ways around the world. So, but first, a brief story, a personal story. So almost 30 years ago, your moderator, which is me, was invited to participate in a pilot program. And that was the United States Department of Energy had selected Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, right up the hill here from me, as one of 3 locations. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm Steve Kromer. I am your moderator today. I'm in Berkeley, California, and I'm a CMVP and I'm the chair of the CMVP board. So in any case, yeah, we had this pilot program at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab of one of 3 pilots in the country to execute a novel, at the time, concept, which was the Energy Savings Performance Contract, or ESPC. And the goal was to encourage third-party investments, money, into federal energy projects. A major obstacle at the time was the lack of standard tools with which to quantify the results. Each company had their own methods for saying, here's how much we saved. So there was no one way to do that. So when our pilot was completed and we had learned some things, I was actually invited to move to Washington, D.C. for a year to share what we had learned and engage with the ESPC community, the performance contracting community. And my mission was to arrive at a standard method or methods for federal projects. Now, along the way, at that time, it got expanded. So the scope was expanded to include all performance contracting in the US and the Northern Hemisphere, and eventually international. So again, the birth of M&V then was really for performance contracting. Eventually, it grew to include utility programs and it went international. So that's where some of the early seeds of modern M&V were created. There was also ASHRAE, there's also ISO, there's other groups that do this stuff, but really it was started somewhere 30 years ago formally as a set of standardized methods. So now it's almost 30 years later. And we're going to see in 3 different parts of the world how those seeds have been adapted to meet local needs. We have 3 speakers who are very experienced trainers and do M&V and in their region. And then we'll see what they have to say about how M&V has prospered and maybe some of the challenges in their area. To wrap up, after they've spoken, I'm going to talk a little bit about an exciting new pilot program in California, and it's called Market Access. Market Access isn't really a program even, it's building a marketplace for energy efficiency where M&V is the foundation of how you're going to settle the results of these projects. So more on that after the session. Okay, the theme of today's seminar is that M&V is still evolving, that common methods are being used and expanded in a wide variety of contexts, and that all of you out there can have a role in this evolution and the unfolding story of how M&V is an important part of the whole energy infrastructure that we enjoy and utilize. Okay, with that, our first esteemed speaker is going to be Hassan Younes. He is the CEO or co-CEO and founder of Grfn Global, a multidisciplinary consultancy, and they do all kinds of really cool stuff with design, clean energy, renewable, soup to nuts about building infrastructure across the Gulf region. He has over 15 years of extensive experience in the fields of energy efficiency, design, sustainability, project management, execution, and project management. He's a trainer for ASHRAE Global Training Center, obviously a CMVP and a trainer of CMVPs and a CEM. So take it away, Hassan.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for the introduction. And glad to be here. I'm talking to different people from different countries at different times. Here it's 7 p.m. I mean, how it started for me, I remember, working as a consultant, maybe in 2007, I started working, and we used to apply these energy efficiency recommendations and designs mainly. And I always thought, like, are they actually working? Are we checking what's happening afterwards? And I've never seen consultants that go back to their designs or go back to the buildings they've designed and see, did their ideas work? Did we actually save energy? Because we always, put these feasibility studies to clients and show them that, yeah, if you use this kind of chiller, we use this kind of heat recovery system, you're going to gain this much and you're going to save that much. And the payback is 2 years, 3 years, the IRR, whatever. After that, like working in design, we started working a bit on existing buildings, trying to save energy. And I got to know about the CEM course, and I took that. And in the CEM course, there was a lot of talk, or there was a section on M&V. At the same time, I was also looking at ASHRAE standards and guidelines. I remember seeing guideline 14 and reading it, and then I thought, like, we should be applying this either to new construction or to energy efficiency projects. So it was mostly working with my team on my own, basically. But then in 2014, we had a super ESCO formed in Dubai. And then from that point in time, it became very relevant to the market. Before that, I would say it was just individual projects, maybe some lead projects looking for M&V plans. And honestly, I haven't seen them being executed at that time. It was just preparing a plan to get that point for lead. But I don't know if anyone really would go and check on that and apply that plan. But once the Super ESCO was here in Dubai, that was real now, and we had to apply M&V to quantify savings. It was a big program. Government was behind it, and then it moved into different parts of the GCC, and that became a requirement in most energy performance contracts. Once the utility costs went higher, the private sector also started looking at energy efficiency projects, and obviously M&V was a requirement as well. And this is how I've become involved in this. I've also took the CMVP course in 2014. I think, Steve, you were the instructor at that point in time. And from that point, we started to do a lot of work that involves M&V, especially in energy performance contracts. But we've also been involved in utility programs. So we helped the Dubai, they call it demand side management programs. They had 8 programs, and we were kind of developing their M&V and how to quantify savings from these programs that have energy efficiency, retrofits, building codes, district cooling, wastewater, tariffs, and many other programs. Now, what I found it interesting is really working with ESCOs and clients. And what I see M&V is always this document, or the M&V plan is that document that either can cause a lot of disputes or no disputes. If you get it right, it helps the project realize, and it helps the client and the ESCO realize those savings. And the main challenges I see is, we have this M&V requirement normally in a request for a proposal. I see it a problem, especially in the private sector, where an ESCO would meet the client and then decide to go to, the client especially for the shared savings contracts where the client sees no risk, the ESCO is going to put the investment and then they're going to pay from the shared savings. So the client would think, yeah, there's no risk there, but at the end of the day, they will need to pay back from the savings. And the tricky part is how to quantify these savings. And I'm, you and I, we've seen a couple of these projects together, and we've seen the problems that arise from these, let's say, not properly done M&V plans. And also, even if you have a proper M&V plan, if you don't really look at your non-routine adjustments, where I see most of the problems happen in ESCO projects. And if I want to summarize the problems, one is the lack of expertise from the client side, and they might be, believing everything the ESCO is telling them. Second is the lack of expertise from the ESCO side. Third is the ESCO may be trying to save money from the M&V budget. So there would be a budget that the client would be paying for or be part of the project. But then if the client does not have that expertise with him, whether it's internal or external consultant, the ESCO will try to save from that part as well to increase their profit. And I've seen it happening where there's a change of management or the new person coming on board with the client, and he starts questioning what was happening the last 2 years. Like he would have some kind of engineering expertise in general, and looks at these equations and like, no, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then problems would happen, disputes will arise. And that's why it's always, crucial to have the M&V plan done properly from day one. The other issue that I find is going for the whole building method. So, and just relying on the energy meters from the utility. So I would say that for a project to be, to realize the savings, you need to have energy management working in tandem with a whole building retrofit. The client normally would like to see the savings and would like to see how much you're saving on an annual basis. So they would like to see this whole building method where they can see that their bills are actually decreasing. At the same time, you'd need to do proper energy management to realize these savings. And what I've seen in many projects that the ESCOs would go for this method, and then they just look at 1 meter and they try to figure out what's happening in that building throughout the different months. And you might have so many non-routine adjustments that it's very hard to quantify if you don't have sub-metering. So I always think like it's always better to have a hybrid approach. So you want to go with the whole building, fine, but at least have some sub-metering so you can be able to quantify and see these savings realized. Other stuff that I've seen a lot of disputes. I've seen a lot of disputes happening, and I would always recommend that there should be an expert with the client on the client side to help mediate between the client and the ESCO. That always, reduces the cost. I've seen arbitration cases of tens of millions of dollars where none of that would be needed if the right expertise and right M&V plan was done. I'm not sure about the time, but yeah, that's my message for today, and I'll be happy to taking questions at the end.
I wish we didn't have to cut you off, Hassan. Your story is fantastic. It's exactly what we wanted to hear today. We're getting some good questions in the box. Let's just remind people, if you have questions in the Q&A comments in the chat, that's fine, but we probably won't get to them as questions. And yeah, you just touched on at least several things which are just so critical, including that M&V costs money, and don't short shrift it, because if you do, you're going to end up paying at the end. If you get it right up front, that's what I heard. If you get it right, it works perfectly. If you don't give it respect, and if you think about it too strictly, like just option C, but don't think about sub-metering, yeah, so spend the extra money, get all the information you need so you don't run into problems. Thanks so much, Hassan. That was an excellent presentation. Our next speaker is Christo van der Merwe. He will correct me on the pronunciation of his last name. Christo has been a real joy to work with on the development of new materials, a huge amount of experience, coming from, actually, if I could highlight what's going on in South Africa, Christo, you can tell more, but in the last 20 years, South Africa was really the second country in the world after the US that picked up the CMVP right away and really integrated it in their economy in all these ways. And that's what we're going to learn more about that in the coming years, hopefully, as we tell that story. But between the university system and graduating PhDs in M&V, things like that that are out there around the world. Maybe some of you are on this meeting. South Africa has been a leader in the deployment of M&V, and we're going to hear exactly how far that's gone. So Christo has a master's in mechanical engineering. He's a certified M&V professional, of course, a CEM, a member of numerous multi-letter agencies, including AEE and EVO. He's one of only 2 trainers certified to train CMVP in Sub-Saharan Africa, the owner of CFJM Solutions, and a specialist industry energy consultancy and one of the few SANAS accredited M&V specialist entities. So Christo, tell us more about how M&V has changed your life and how you're using it in South Africa to save the world. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hassan. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. Yes, as we saw, there's an Australian here sitting at 1 o'clock. So hopefully we do not bore him to sleep, her or him. Well, coming to this, yes, M&V in South Africa started basically in the early 2000s, around about 2002, 2003, when our own utility, Eskom, started out with a DSM program. Basically, much as Hassan has just told us on happening there, I can see parallels happening in terms of how M&V is evolving on his side and where it's ending up, and the diversification in terms of what we experience here as well in South Africa. And in a way, sort of starting in Kenya as well. So the DSM program started demand-side management, and instead of focusing on energy efficiency, which was largely focused on the CMVP at that time, at that stage, we were focusing on demand management because we had huge peaks in the morning and the afternoon, trying to avoid failures and switch off of turbines and tripping of turbines and all that lovely goodies. And of course, then trying to minimize and delay expenditure and building new power stations, which run mainly on coal or sort of ash on our side. They always said we are specialists in running power stations on ash, but that's for a different topic and so forth. So I was already busy with normal energy management, just basically graduated on that. And I fell in with a team called Gustav Ratloff, LJ Grobler, many of you will know them, as well as the late Prof. Ian Lane. And then my exposure to energy management and eventually to measurement and verification started. And as the company grew and the DSM projects grew, basically I grew with that. And my role became eventually M&V manager for the whole team. At that stage, we were about 7 teams running on the DSM program, making sure M&V is done. And it was mostly done. I'm just going to switch off on the lights here because it's starting to get dark on the outside. Mostly universities were used for the measurement verification teams and the assessments that we needed to do. The main reason being that the universities were neither involved in implementing projects nor building projects or nor on a profitable basis on these projects. Whereas the main reason was we're using public funding and public money. So we needed to make sure that we curb on stuff like under the table payments, fly-by-nights and all that. The universities were also very well situated for progressive research and development in M&V methodologies for these DSM projects, as well as other unique stuff that started to roll out. At some stage, we were having energy efficiency rollout programs. We had one of the largest CFL, the compact fluorescent lights, the small tubey lights that you put into the incandescent types. We had a huge rollout on that, about, if I remember correctly, something like 46 million of those light bulbs rolled out throughout the whole of South Africa. That's almost a light bulb per person. And that program, a lot of research went into how to apply M&V to a program, and what works and what does not work, and what can you let go and what do you need to focus on. And it's a bit difficult in terms of not just quantifying an option A, B, C, or a retrofit isolation and so forth. You need to clearly understand the program, and there's a lot of research going about with such a program to help it evolve. And basically building onto that is how the industry started to understand the role of M&V as well. We were in the beginning much criticized as a watchdog, a police dog, watching, trying to catch you out, trying to see what you're doing wrong, making sure you're getting penalties. But after the third and the fourth project, where we sort of intervened and friendly around the table had a discussion saying, listen, mate, you've done this and this and this and expecting these amount of savings. We do not see this happening because of this and this that we've experienced in the field when we went and did our verification visits. And as such a way, we actually saved a lot of projects whereby penalties would have been paid for underperformance. And the guys learned from this and they built a much better project going forward into the future and so forth. And therefore, M&V at this stage basically played a role not only as a verifier of energy savings, we became a risk mitigation, we became the truth committee, we became a friend, we became a research tool to help improve sustainability, improve project definitions. And to such a time that during around about 2013, November of 2013, we had the very first tax incentive focusing purely on energy efficiency. Before that, we had another tax incentive, which apart from local growth and localization in products and so forth, it was focusing on the efficient expansion of the manufacturing industry. So through this tax incentive program, a huge success and a huge program, we ensured local products being used, thereby creating facilities that need to provide these products, local training of skills and upgrades of skills, local energy efficiency. So it's not just a copy paste of the current inefficient systems. You needed to make sure that you brought in more efficient technologies and systems and operations to expand manufacturing that will add to the economy, that will add to better production, and as they say, a better life for all. But the main tax incentive that we're running at this stage now, and that is active until 2025, is our what we call the 12L tax incentive. And in this case, we have a lot of, I want just to quickly share a screen, go, bang. We have, in this case, a number of projects that has won and gone through the savings program and could claim some tax incentives for efficiencies that has been brought forth. And you can clearly see here, oh, sorry, the Zoom is not working that well. We are looking in the coal sectors, diesel, grid electricity, jet fuel, blah, 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 petrol, electricity, and so forth. And it's all over sectors of economy, accommodation, administrative, agricultural, financial, manufacturing, mining, wholesale, retail, and so forth. All of these sectors has benefited of tax incentives, which are then being assessed M&V'd by people like us to ensure that there are proper verification features in place on proper reporting, accurate data and values. And again, during these assessments, we have become a friend of the energy management industry, the ESCOs. whereby we assessing, helping out. They understand how we work. They understand how they're being assessed. They can improve their maintenance, improve their sustainability, improve their project performance through interaction with M&V and the results that we keep on verifying. Just to give an idea, we're looking at 274 projects to date. So that's from November 2013 to date. 274 projects that has been gone through the tax incentives, looking at energy reductions of 27,150 gigawatt hours. That's one big number. And all of these are currently run by around about 8 teams. And these teams, each and every one, myself included, needs to be SANAS accredited. I'm almost done, Steve. And the SANAS accreditation is basically there to ensure that a properly qualified person with correct experience and skills are actually performing the work according to a standard. And the standard that we have currently is our own M&V standard, which eventually had led also to the ISO standard being brought up. And all of this is based around all other standards and protocols applicable around the world. So what's happening in the world can be applied and done in South Africa and vice versa as well. And it comes back that M&V is, again, it's not just a watchdog. It is evolving each and every day. Again, we can talk for hours on what's going on. And there's a lot of talk of M&V 2.0. And many people think, okay, it's some form of an Android or a Raspberry Pi that sits somewhere. But no, the human element, the professional guy with the knowledge and the know-how and the skills is still required. So the normal M&V 1.0 is still applicable, but there is much better ways to apply this. And this is where the involvement comes in, where the improvement comes in, and why the new CMVP program is also being expanded and focusing on some of that stuff. I'll keep quiet now, and there's a specific something somewhere.
Christo, again, thank you so much. I just can't say how cool it is to see so many points I want to reiterate about what you just said. Although I have to say that 26,000 gigawatt hours, 27,000. 27,000. That's 1,000 hours of California energy use. So I was thinking it was one, but actually we run about 26 gigawatts typically over the course of an average day. So that's 1,000 hours. So you could have gotten us through a couple of months of California total consumption with your savings. Yeah, let me just thank Christo generally and specifically say thank you for your work on the new CMVP materials. As you said, we're trying to bring all the experience you've seen and the evolution you've seen in your economy and make it available to people everywhere else, because we've seen you go, this thing, I noticed a couple of things specifically. You talk about both economy-wide M&V and supported by the whole culture, so to speak, so government, ESCOM, universities. And then there's also individual contractual M&V, which Hassan talked more about, private sector, party-to-party contracts. These are both forms of M&V that we're trying to put our rules around so that it makes something consistent. And people like you can be hired, and people like you out there, the 1,000 of you that are going to watch this thing, can create a path for your career to support both these entities and be the glue that holds these projects together. I really, really, really believe M&V is the most important role in energy efficiency. I mean, ultimately. And that's a broad set of skills and communication you need to make with different parties through the life of these projects. So I could talk about so many things here, but again, a shameless plug. I hope to be starting a podcast, and hours and hours of conversation with Carol Stein and others down there, yourself, and people in South Africa that have the experience in that economy of really developing M&V and watching it evolve. So thanks, Christo. Watch this channel. All right, two great speakers so far. I won't say we've saved the best for last, but hey, I'll say it. Antonio Miranda, my dear good friend Antonio in Spain, who I had the absolute delight to meet with and stay up late and out for dinner because they eat late over there, even though we're training CMVPs and mentoring. And way back in like 2010, I think it was. So Antonio's been working for 20 years in the energy industry, mostly natural gas, natural fenosa. which became Naturgy in 2018. He's also a CMVP instructor. He's a level 4 instructor, so you can train trainers. He's been my colleague on the EVO training committee for something like 8 or 9 or 10 years. So we've had a lot of good time together. Again, heartfelt, sincere desire to watch M&V grow and work across the needs it has in the European and Spanish situation and context. So our third speaker then, moving east to west from Dubai to South Africa to Spain and greater of Europe, is Antonio Miranda. Also, he's the president of the Bunkering Working Group. You can tell us about that, and the past president of the Association of Energy Engineers in Spain. So and the chapter there. Okay, thanks, Antonio. Take it away.
Thank you, Steve. You easily could introduce me as your pupil, because that's the way I got to know AEE and the measurement amplification world. The story of M&B in Spain is a success story. I'm sorry for Christo, but South Africa may be #1 and Spain will be #1 as well, because of the large community of CMVP professionals that we have. And let me tell you why and how we get to that, beautiful number. I would like to emphasize the message of Steve. Energy has no borders. Energy is the same worldwide. You can change the units. You can use joules, watts, BTUs, and you can put it difficult, but still we will find that the energy solutions, the energy problems are mostly the same. What changed and what is specific and what is unique is the needs of different sectors, different areas, the resources that we have and how we apply it. For us, beginning the century in the last years of the past century, we started the liberalization of the energy sector. We started by electricity sector, and afterwards we introduced it into the gas sector. Still, there were many things to do. We have a new playing role in the market, which was the customer, because there was no possibility for the customer before that revolution to choose and to decide how he wanted to use or to deal to have the energy needs covered. And that's a significant change. That's how we started to introduce the need of energy efficiency. We wanted to provide the customer with the best solution for them, and the customer wanted to have a lower electricity bill, but not only but saving, but contracting the lower price as possible, but also to be an active player, to play an active role. By that time, I remember I'm talking 20 years ago. Now it's a joke, but I remember some professionals we came across with the idea of certifying, as having some knowledge in the market, and we use the LinkedIn tool, which is pretty normal now. It wasn't by that time, and we get to know each other face to face in Madrid, in La Universidad de Minas, who always supported the chapters since the very beginning. And we gathered there 100 people, nearly 100 people. It was amazing for me to be able to get in touch with so many people with the same goals, the same interests. Some I knew from my career, but some others, obviously, we didn't see each other. It was the first time for us. Well, we managed to bring AEE knowledge to Spain. We managed to get the certification. We made it possible to certify professionals on CMVP, on CIM, on CAA, and then started to grow the energy professional community in Spain, which was something very well welcome. I will tell you that no, not now. My kids, that's life. Well, the good thing that we did by that time, and that was my close friend Elena, what she did was to start introducing CMVP certification to the energy local agencies, and that was a pretty clever idea, because once you pursued these people of the benefits on knowing how to assess, how to identify the energy conservation measures that actually were saving energy. That made that changed the world of energy programs. And afterwards, it was commonplace to find municipalities asking for CMBP professionals when they were bidding, when they were asking for for ESCO companies to apply for a specific tenders. I have to say that prior to that, we were enrolled in a project, in a private project, 26 million euros on specific savings in a big chain of supermarkets. And it was funny because eventually the final report was including as every regular MMB plan, we were estimating the savings that we have had for the 3 to 5 years period. And that was not very well welcome, because on the one side, if you were saving, why were you asking for European funds? And if on the contrary, you were not saving, why did you choose this ECM? So it was sad, and it's sad to recognize it now, but we have to skip the saving part, and we just focus on justifying payments. And that's really sad to say, but that was how it was 20 years ago. That was the market for us by then. Now things are completely different. And now all that well-organized MMB plans are old enough to have several certification on savings. And now we have to deal with plans that were adapted to the fundamentals of MMB, and some that were not so well performed. And the results are significantly different. And now we have to deal with some courts eventually to decide if the savings makes any sense according to a proper MMB plan. One of the lessons that I have learned during all these years, and that's why I'm proud to say that I am a pupil of Steve, is that from the very beginning, you realize that energy problems are worldwide the same, and that having a world community of energy professionals is feasible, and it eventually comes as a benefit to all the members. I've been working with Steve for 10 years. I've been contributing to adapting the new CMBP material. I'm very proud of that. Because I gain a lot of experience from the impacts that I have from people supporting these voluntary training committees. And I'm proud to see Hassan here, because when I first met him, I say, Hassan, if you have any interest on joining and contributing and showing your expertise, please raise your hand. And that's exactly what he did. And here he is, as a huge professional in the MMB area. And I would like to encourage you people to do the same, because that's what it's all about. It's time for all the whole community involved in MMB to raise your hands and to make an effort to make this knowledge on MMB bigger, to make it rise, and to share the best experience. For us, it's time. Now I come 20 years later than Christo. Now it is time for us for demand response. And demand response is going to be for sure asking for measurement and verification. I mean, direct load control will be, left aside for voluntary programs. And aggregators will definitely have to identify who is responding to these price signals. And MMB has a lot to do right there. I'm proud to say that we will have the new CMBP program soon in July in Barcelona, face to face, which is also something that we are missing a lot. And we will have the opportunity to continue. We will change the local training partner. We will be working with a training in Spain, but still we will continue increasing the number of CMBP professionals and making this AEE family even bigger and bigger. I would like to share many more things with you, but probably, Steve, you want to save some time for Q&A. So open for questions.
Unmute myself. Thanks, Antonio. I was going to let you run because I love listening to you. We were told a long time ago, muy guapo. Antonio probably wins the, well, maybe not. They're all good looking folks. Antonio, I didn't want to step on your toes or suggest that Spain was in any way secondary to South Africa. In numbers, I think you guys were early on. You had several hundred CMVPs really quickly. So for a while there, when I was watching back in 2005, 6, and 7, when I was the chair of EVO, I think it was amazing to watch the CMVP community in Spain blast off and in the AEE relationships there. And you were a large part of that. And then when you became the chair and the chapter and the rest of it, that grew. So yeah, the CMVP numbers, and you can count CMVPs. That's an actual thing. You count it. It's real, you know, and we know that's happening. Now the M&V itself, you showed you had to learn how to do it over time. So you get the community going. The community works together to see what good M&V really is, what it takes to do a project that doesn't end up in court, right? That's the main thing here. When you take CMVP, you want to, and I'm seeing other people nod on my panelists, you can't see them, but I've always said this, you know, M&V is where engineers work out the problem so it doesn't end up in the lawyer's account. And the lawyer can come in early and sign and create a better contract, and everyone can follow that contract. And that's important. I don't want the lawyers out of the picture, but good M&V, when you learn as a community how to do it and everyone's involved, all the organizations and institutions, universities, government, tax, when everyone gets it right, then it's much, much more effective. And I love your message, and we've shared it, Antonio, about local communities working together, but then the global message, if we can help each other around the world, it's all the same sort of thing. Yeah, sure, Australia, you've got, you know, New South Wales has a program, and I know there's neighbors and there's other programs down there, but as we've learned in Australia, the CMVP program did really well to unify all those. So yeah, that's the message there. Just want to also say thanks. I hope that supermarket thing went well. I remember when you were doing it, and it was across the country, and I was shopping in one of them thinking, okay, this is getting M&V on it. But yeah, just thanks again for your thing. Let's get to some questions, but first I want to give a final wrap up. So yes, let's see where to go. Okay, so
Steve, yeah. If I may jump in here just to underline something that Hassan and you said, M&V costs money. And it is something we have to face, and that's I mean, one of the principles that we have to understand from M&B. You will have to pay. If you don't do it beforehand, you will do it, you know, much more expensive afterwards. And this is something that I think there's no doubt on that.
Absolutely. What we all know, if you're in M&V, is that it's a process. We made that a really strong part of our definition. It is a process, and you teach people that they're thinking about the end in mind when they start the process. And the process is that at the end, there's through the reporting period, for those of you that know M&V, there's settlement going on. There's people exchanging value, money, for savings, which is the worst word in our industry because it doesn't really exist. But if that settlement goes properly, people shake hands, then they settle and it's done. And that whole process is efficient. So the collection of data to support that settlement is considered, executed, and finalized, and people learn how to set something up, run it, and settle, and do it over and over. That's the goal. So you know, yeah, cost is the critical factor, because you can't do everything you want to do, otherwise you're eating up all the value. Those are things we know about. I love that you finished with demand response. I'm also going to do that right now, but so let me just go through my end talk here. We've just heard how M&V concepts are being used to benefit energy management projects. Energy management, as Antonio said, and as others have said, has gone beyond just energy efficiency, changing light bulbs, to now load shifting and other things, demand response, flexibility. These names are changing around the world. So we've heard how it's been used around the globe, how we witnessed how the birth of modern M&V has taken hold. I can just say personally, it's a true honor and inspiration to see how that's happened and meet all of you guys and work with you. So good M&V is working, right? It can work, it does work, it belongs out there, and it's being accepted. But it's also an imperative that we expand the applications we still face major challenges. So let me tell you a real story right now happening in California. So nowhere is it more important. We're transitioning our energy grid. So it's not just that we have our home with light bulbs and our buildings with air conditioning and chillers and all. We have climate goals and energy goals for the state. So the legislature gets involved and the regulators, and they put us on a path to a much cleaner grid. So at any given day, we might have 12 or 13 now gigawatts of solar energy and wind, renewable energy. We can run our state in California on that stuff, but it's only coming in at different parts of the time of the day. So the overall goals are to clean up the grid and put us on a path with more renewable energy, but it's not anticipated to be smooth. And by that, I mean, Governor Newsom, our governor, has called for aggressive use of all demand side resources this summer. So this summer and next summer, to help soften the blow of adopting all these new massive investments in clean energy, which come in, they're great, but they come in not the right time of day to meet our loads. Our loads are out of sync with our renewable energy. So to soften the blow, because they don't match up, we've instituted a new program in order to address this immediate challenge and potential blackouts this summer. So we got a real danger that politically is a danger. California Public Utilities Commission on December 2nd last year approved a new pilot. And I'm going to try and not use the word program because we're trying to emphasize that it's called market access. We're trying to give the market access to the energy grid to prove it can deliver services to the grid when the grid needs it. And those services can be energy efficiency or load shifting. So this is inspired by Recurve, the Flex Market program. Flex Market, let's just leave it at market. The Flex Market's worked well. It got expanded to $150 million for the next 2 years, another pilot program. So market payments in this market will be based on standardized M&V and open source M&V methods. So the M&V is a true pay for performance. If you can prove you've reduced or shifted your load on an hourly basis over 8760 the whole year, the benefits are calculated and for load reductions and load shifting, quantified and rewarded. And the rewards are big. The amount of money you can get for shifting load is up in the dollars per kilowatt hour in the peak periods. This is an incredibly exciting new market. And to no small degree, the fact that we're able to run like true M&V in California in one of our biggest market, and it's trusted by the PUC and the legislature, it's a testament to the 20, 30 years of experience we have in M&V around the globe. People now trust it and are using it in a big way. So I'm actually going to just put up, like Hassan did, a quick link to that Flex Market. So just again to remind you, we're turning buildings and the whole economy into virtual power plants with these Flex Markets. And I got a couple of questions in the Q&A about what's the future. The basis for payment, when you go to the site, I'll put it in the chat, is a 8760 baseline and a 1 year in the performance period afterwards. So it's real M&V on a portfolio basis across buildings. And you can look at this one later. But that's kind of the future. So I wanted to leave you with just M&V has evolved. We're continuing to expand and involve the fundamental concepts of a pre-post measurement with a fundamental baseline measurement compared to what happens in the reporting period to support these types of clean energy initiatives in California and around the world. So with that, I'll stop and let's get to some questions. And let's shoot. I'll read a couple. Can you guys see the Q&A, the panelists?
But it's too long.
You can say, are there any questions you want to pick up on that you've seen that you think you want to jump in on, or could I just start from the top? Okay, we'll start from the top. What do you do when a PC, I guess performance contract and provider, doesn't disclose the actual savings when it's not in their best interest? So anybody can take these on. I think Hassan started to work on this one, but anybody take it over.
You called John Wick.
Called John Wick. That was it, yeah.
That's a joke.
No.
I don't.
So honestly, look, I mean, if you're a client and contractually, it should be there in the contract from the beginning that they need to disclose the actual saving. Now, if it's not, then this would lead to a dispute. That's what we're trying to say, is that if you put the M&V plan correctly, you have all these elements in the contract, What the MNV plan is saying, I'm going to follow this particular standard or guideline or protocol, and that particular standard mentions that you need to show the savings. Then you have, you are saving yourself the battle in the future, because they won't go they won't choose that option to go with non-disclosing the actual savings. But if that happens, you have to escalate it. And normally we start with negotiations. So you just sit with the top management and say, like, we're working on this together. Let's try to solve it. And normally that should be solved. Like, they would show you the savings. I don't see a point where they would say, no, we're going to hide it. So how are they claiming their payments if they're not showing you the savings? So I think in general, sitting across the table with the ESCO should solve this. Doesn't get solved, then you need to escalate. And in some contracts I've seen technical experts being the first, let's say, person or let's say option to go to, and then it can go to arbitration and others, which you don't want to go there because it costs a lot of money.
Costs more money to fix it. All right, we got a bunch of questions. Let's try and get to all of them. Thanks, Hassan. Yeah, back to planning is the best plan. What's the first opportunity for M&V in the next 2 years? When I say first, I guess maybe biggest. Where do you see M&V in the next 2 years? What's the biggest opportunities? I just threw my pitch in for that. Anybody jump in?
From our side, we see a move towards especially the verification portion of M&V being applied in various other areas, such as IRAX, the International Renewable Energy Certification Program, carbon tax, verification of actual installed capacities or emission reductions, and so forth. I'm thinking that is the verification portion, especially based on the impartiality or the independence factor, is the way it seems to be moving. I know there's a lot of debate about impartiality and independence, and there's arguments against it and for it. I am actually for it, because when there's a couple of million financial rubles or dollars or rands or shillings or whatever involved, independence makes sure that the devil stays off your shoulder. And we've seen that more and more and more in the world where we are today. So I'm thinking that's my opinion on where it goes. Energy efficiency projects will still be there. DSM projects will still be there, continuing growing. They will become more and more difficult, of course, because the low-hanging fruit are being picked. So there's evolvement on very specialized M&V for the more difficult projects. And then, of course, the verification portion taken into other programs and systems that need such work done.
Thanks, Christo. I'm looking at something. These questions are still coming in. I apologize to those who we don't get around to, because we have 24 questions and not enough time. I'm sure AEE would be happy to consider another seminar where we dive into some of these details and things like, how do you deal with energy savings not showing up on utility bills? Even when we have an M&V report that shows the outcome from energy conservation measure and retrofit isolation, presumably, if the utility bill doesn't show it, how do you convince people of that if they're not convinced by your M&V?
Steve, may I?
Please do.
We encourage people to define the M&V plan covering all the effects that the ECM will have on your facility, and we train it, and we show it in the training that not only energy but also power has a significant effect of a direct effect of ECM. But still there's something more relevant nowadays, which is CO2 emissions. And CO2 emissions has its own market. And it is something that you can claim for, because these savings come straight from the application of your ECM. And all those aspects has to be broke down in your M&V plan. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for you to ask for these savings. But the truth is that these savings are there. Reactive energy is another sample. I mean, it happens the first time you make an MMB plan. Afterwards, you have to make a list of all the benefits you will have, because the ESCO has to benefit from all that direct, impact that the ECM has. And it is just a matter of planning. I see, and I want to link it with the former question. I see, unfortunately, and again, energy is worldwide. We all are suffering this gas price crisis, and that's only good news for MMB. I mean, I'm from energy conservation measures, because if the investment, if you have a payback of 7 years, before the crisis, now you short it to 3 years, maybe 2.5 years, because the price of the energy is so high, it's skyrocketing so rapidly that, the paybacks reduce extremely. And we are already seeing that effect here in Spain, not only with energy conservation measures, but also with self-consumption, with distributed generation, solar panels, and batteries, batteries at homes. This is a huge market. This is huge market, and I'm pretty sure that there will be an increasing demand of MMB professionals and also MMB consultancy, because now people, when they attend a CMBP training, they save some time for asking for their own plan, because they want to receive, assessment on their own plans. And this is something that they have to consider, how to prove some of the plans that the professionals are using in the market. We have to somehow validate that they have adherence to the CMBP concept, or the basic MMB concept, because the market is asking for that.
Antonio, every one of your comments, actually, all three of you, I think we did pretty well. We're going to wrap it up because we got 2 minutes on the clock. But every one of your comments, I'm writing notes, just tapped into further veins of discussion. So I'd like all of you out there who are attending, and later when you watch this recording, to put these questions together and send them to us, and tell AEE you want more of this stuff. I'm going to suggest that this group right here would be happy to get together later over coffee or whatever drink Christo drinks down there, and look through some of these questions and maybe try and do an offline recording that we can put up later, just to give you guys your due. You put a lot of good questions, 28 up there now. We're just not going to have time. So thank you for your continued attention, everyone. We still have roughly 400 people online. That's about what we expected from percentages of these things, and many of you will come in later. Mel, just let me say one more thing before you take over. And I just lost my screen. Okay, so for those of you that are CMVPs, and this is one of the questions, that CMV material and slides, as you know, maybe most of you know, is under revision. So the program has been evolving and edited as per plan, a new job task analysis and new slides. But if you took the course before, for all you out there that took the course and have not yet taken the exam, or for those of you who wish to retake the exam, there will be a new one around the end of May. So AEE will provide you with an online update session for that. So it'll probably be me, and I'll walk you through what the new material in the new course is, so that you're prepared for the new exam. So again, if you're already a CMVP, took the course, you have not taken the exam, or you're going to retake it, when you take that new exam, you're going to want to be updated on what type of new material is in there, and we will have an online course for you for that, to give you what differences there are. So yeah, and with that, I'll hand it off and say thanks to the panelists, and we'll see you all later pretty soon working on other things. So take care. Thanks so much. Mel, it's back to you.
Thank you, Steve, Antonio, Hassan, and Christo. It was a great, intriguing deep dive into M&V in today's presentation. And we'd like to invite all of those on this call to explore the opportunity to distinguish yourself, if you aren't already, with an accredited AE certification like CMVP. You can find upcoming training courses by scanning the QR code on the screen, or you can also visit our website, aecenter.org. And we'd like to thank you as a global community of AE professionals for your participation in today's session. This is a reminder that your record of attendance will be emailed to you 24 hours after the conclusion of this webinar. And that's all for today. We hope to see you next time. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.